Hey guys, I'm here to do day 4 of my 15-day video challenge. I actually already recorded this video, but it ended up being too long, even for YouTube. So I'm going to try to shorten it down quite a bit. So if it's not as in-depth as I originally planned, I'm sorry. But yeah, so I'm just gonna do a blanket statement really quickly. Just because I've had bad things happen in my life, it doesn't mean that I am resentful or um, even angry about it. I do believe that these are experiences that we're able to grow from. And I think that even though they have been traumatic, they've made me a better person over the years. So just so we're clear about that, I'm gonna do the the day in bullet points really quick. So it's my worst experience or experiences, and those would be in order: being sexually assaulted, my grandmother passing away the day before my 17th birthday, my uncle passing away a year later, Ronnie being killed in Afghanistan in 2010, living with an abusive parent, which actually was from age 16 to 20, but mostly the abuse got really bad after I had hit adulthood or maturity, I guess. And the last one would be being homeless or losing our house. And three of those really coincide. Ronnie passing away, my parents getting a divorce, my dad's abuse, and losing the house. They all kind of have the same timeline. Ronnie passed away almost 2 years ago now. In a month, it'll be 2 years. So that's a lot to think about. And my life changed severely when Ronnie passed away. Not only because I had lost one of my very best friends, but because 2 days later, my dad was served with divorce papers from my mom. Which, if she had known what was going to happen, she wouldn't have let that happen. But unfortunately, life happens like that. When it rains, it pours. So everything sort of happened all at once. We were able to keep the house for about a year, but the house was sold out from underneath us for really cheap, and so we didn't really get any profit. Somebody actually took the money, and so we were left to sleep in our car and sleep in a hotel and to sleep on other people's couches and floors and stuff like that for a few months, and it was really scary. And it's made it so I feel weird about leaving my apartment now for any prolonged period of time, or about putting roots down. And that's scary. I mean, nobody wants to worry about whether or not they're going to have a place to live tomorrow. And I think at this point in time, especially in America, where we think we're number one in all these things when we're really not, I think that's a really big issue that people aren't willing to talk about. And I don't think that people should have to go without, just because life has been difficult for them. But I do believe in working towards things and stuff like that. But just because somebody you know has had a rough time of it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be helped. But anyway, I digress. Sorry, I'm like hitting my my mic. Anyway, back to the beginning. My grandmother passed away on January 8th, 2007, the day before my 17th birthday, and I held her hand as she passed away. Um, she was diagnosed with cancer 2 weeks prior, and she deteriorated really quickly, and it was really hard. She ended up coming to live with us, and we cleaned out my room, kind of disinfected it, made it very sterile. We put in a hospital bed for her, her oxygen, anything that she might need. And the next morning, she literally couldn't breathe, and that night she passed away at 8:40. I held her hand as she passed, and it was a life-changing moment for me. That was when I stopped self-harming, and it made me view my depression differently. And I miss her a lot every day. She was one of the greatest people in the world. She taught me a lot. And a year later, my uncle was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he passed away 2 months later. Pancreatic cancer, if you don't know, is sometimes referred to as a silent killer because they can't detect it usually until it's in a very late stage, and by that time, there's nothing they can do for you. And he also deteriorated really quickly, and it was sort of scary to see this man who had once been so full of life, who had a gray ponytail and a golden earring, and was always chatting and always outgoing and who sounded completely intelligent, and you would believe anything he said because of the way he said it, to this man who couldn't get off the couch, who had a buzz cut, who still wore his gold earring, but it looked outrageously out of place on his emaciated frame. That was scary to see my uncle deteriorate that quickly, and he was in his early 50s when he passed away. And he was a really special man. He was one of the first men I trusted after being sexually assaulted, and we had a really special bond, and I miss him a lot. Um, as for Ronnie, if you've been following me long enough, then you know how I feel about losing him. It's been one of the hardest experiences of my life because, first of all, being in your or your late teens and your early 20s, you don't ever expect anybody you know, especially your age, to pass away. Even more so because he was in Afghanistan when he was killed. He was killed by an IED. Um, it's you have somebody over there and you. Oh, my phone just went off. But anyway, it's a possibility for this person to not come back. But I talked to Ronnie every day, and when he would get back from missions, he would, get a hold of me to let me know that he was okay, even if I wasn't around at the time. So you have constant contact with this person, and one day they, they're not there anymore. It's something I haven't come to grips with yet, and I don't think I ever will. Ronnie was 19 when he passed away. He was 5 days away from being 20, and at the time I was almost 21. He's a baby. It's just an incredible loss in the world, and it's hard to imagine even now the world without him in it. Sometimes I forget that he's not here, and I will go to message him, or I will go to text him, or I'll see something and I'll go, man, I can't wait to tell Ronnie about this, and I can't because he's not around anymore. And he would have been getting out of the military soon too. He was incredibly talented. He had a knack for making you feel like you were the only person in the world that mattered. He was an incredible writer, and he loved music. He loved playing music, and he loved learning about music, and he dissected lyrics like they were, Greek texts from way back when. They were that important to him, and he made you stop and look at the world differently in a way that maybe you hadn't thought about looking at it before. And he also made you look at yourself the same way. And I miss him, and I miss our late talks, and I miss our early morning talks, and I miss comparing books and music and talking about our futures and what kind of dog he wanted when he got out of the military, and our Scarface marathons that we were going to have and stuff like that, and our Californication marathons. I just miss my friend. I just miss my Ronnie. I really do. It hasn't gotten any easier. I don't know if it ever will. I'm sorry. Anyway, um, let's see. After Ronnie, being sexually assaulted. I've written extensively about that on my Tumblr. I'm sure I will again at some point because it's something that I'm still dealing with, even though it happened when I was 13 years old. That's the sort of thing that shapes you and changes your perceptions of relationships and people and yourself. That also has a lot to do with my self-harm and my depression. I was diagnosed with depression when I was 11, and I've been tested for bipolar markers, but apparently I'm not at risk for manic depression, but it's still something that I worry about because it does run in families. Let's see. I self-harmed for years. This has to do with my depression and being sexually assaulted. I mean, they're all interconnected to some degree. I don't self-harm any longer. I haven't for years now. The last time I self-harmed was before my grandmother was diagnosed with cancer. So I'm proud of that, but it's still a struggle, and people will tell you that it's a myth, or it's a made-up disease, or it's a made-up fad, phase thing that you're going through, and it's not. I truly understand, and if you ever need anybody to talk about self-harm, or suicide, or sexual assault, or having an abusive parent, or having an abusive relationship, if you just need somebody to talk to because you don't know who else to turn to, my ask is always open, and I mean that genuinely. I'd hate to think of anybody suffering in silence, or even suffering and crying for help, and having nobody there to give it to them because nobody will acknowledge that they're genuinely at risk. So if you ever need anything, my ask is open, and I promise to do the best that I can to be discreet. But yeah, I've also written extensively about having an abusive parent. Of course, I wasn't physically abused. I was mentally and emotionally abused, which is also something people tend to overlook because there's no physical ramifications or physical reminders of the abuse. And just because you can't see something doesn't mean that it's not as real and it's not as traumatic and damaging. Those are things I'm still dealing with. My father and I are working on rebuilding our relationship, but After years of conditioning and hearing somebody talk about me a certain way or talking to me a certain way, it changes your perception of yourself and of that person and of relationships you might have in the same vein. Um, it really hurts. It's hard. And people will overlook it because, again, there is no physical evidence of what's going on. But if you ever need to talk about anything, I really am a message away and I will do my best to help you or listen. If that's what you need, I will listen to you because I know how hard it is when people decide that you're not worth the time. Um, I'm I hope this is infinitely shorter than the last version was. I know this is quick and not as in depth as I had hoped it to be. I just don't want to go over my limit again on YouTube. I mean, who goes over their limit on YouTube? Really? On Tumblr, I can totally understand. It's 5 minutes long, but on YouTube, that's an issue. Tomorrow is day 5, and it's a video of you reading a passage from your favorite book. I have most of my favorite books here, with the exceptions of Fight Club and the Harry Potter series, so I do have book 7 here. But I do think I know what book I'm going to read from tomorrow, and I'm really excited to share it with you because it is my all-time favorite book. Um, I'm gonna wrap this up. I hope everybody's had a great day, or a great night, or a good Monday, wherever you are. Um, and yeah, if you need anything, just I'm a message away, and I will do the best that I can by you. I hope you have. I hope you've enjoyed this, and if not, then I'm sorry that you had to watch it. Sorry about the mic. Bye, guys.